A fire is burning low. Around it, 6 adults. One of them is holding a baby, but it is not the mother. It is a woman who has not given birth in 12 years. She is feeding the child anyway. Across the fire, another adult reaches over and adjusts the infant's position without being asked. No one gives an instruction. No one is in charge. The baby is passed, held, fed, and carried back before the mother returns from gathering. This is not unusual. This is how it worked for most of human history, and without it, you would not exist. Human babies are among the most helpless creatures ever born. A newborn foal can stand within an hour. A chimp infant grips its mother's fur from the first day and travels with her everywhere. A human infant cannot hold its own head up. It cannot regulate its own temperature. It cannot feed itself for years, for the first 12 months. It contributes nothing to its own survival. This is not a flaw in the design. It is the cost of something extraordinary. Human brains are so large and so expensive to grow that the body cannot finish building them inside the womb. Birth happens early, before the skull grows too wide, to survive delivery. What emerges is unfinished. A brain that will take 20 years to fully develop. A body that will need more care for longer than almost any other species on the planet and in the ancient world. That body had to survive without a single modern tool. No formula, no clinic, no warm house with a locked door, a nursing mother in a hunter-gatherer band. Walked 4 to 8 miles on foraging days. She carried the infant. She also carried gathered food, tools, and water. She watched for snakes, for unstable ground, and for group movement. She nursed up to 4 times an hour in early infancy. She did this while hungry, while tired, and while managing older children who also needed her. The math does not work for one person. Anthropologist Sarah Blaffer Hrdy spent decades studying this problem. Her conclusion was direct. Human mothers were never meant to raise children alone. The biology does not support it. The caloric cost of nursing an infant is roughly 500 extra calories per day. A foraging woman cannot reliably produce that surplus on her own, while also moving, gathering, and staying safe. Something else had to cover the gap. That something was the group. Hrdy called it cooperative breeding. What researchers now call alloparenting. Allo means other. Other people raising the child alongside the mother. In every hunter-gatherer society studied, infants are held by non-mothers for significant portions of the day. Among the Afay of the Congo Basin, infants are passed to an average of 14 different caregivers. In the first days of life, fathers carry, older siblings carry. Grandmothers feed pre-chewed food to infants who cannot yet eat solids. Aunts, cousins, and unrelated adults all participate without being asked. The infant is not one woman's problem. The infant is the group's project. This is where it gets stranger. Most primates do not do this. A chimpanzee mother will not hand her infant to another female. She guards it aggressively. Other females who attempt to touch the infant are chased off. In chimp groups, infant care is almost entirely solitary. The mother does everything. Human mothers gave up that guard. And Hrdy argues this was not accidental. An infant handled by many adults learns to read many faces. It learns to respond to attention, to signal need, to engage. Infants who could charm caregivers survived. Infants who were engaging, readable, emotionally responsive. Those were the ones who got held when the mother was gone. Over thousands of generations, this may have selected for something. Human infants are uniquely good at making eye contact. Newborns follow faces within hours of birth. They smile earlier than any other primate. They vocalize in ways that trigger caregiving responses. Across unrelated adults, your first social skill was survival technology, and the group responded to it. Now consider what that group had to become to make this work. Cooperative infant care requires trust between adults who are not always related. It requires the ability to track who has contributed, who has not, who can be relied on. It requires food sharing, because a mother who is nursing needs to be fed by someone. It requires something close to a social contract. Some researchers believe cooperative breeding is one of the roots of human empathy. When you are wired from birth to read faces and respond to distress signals, and when your survival depended on adults choosing to care for you, you grow into an animal that notices other animals' internal states. You grow into something that teaches, shares, watches over, and grieves. The grandmother hypothesis adds one more layer. In most species, females remain reproductively active until death. Human females stop reproducing decades before they die. For a long time, this looked like a biological puzzle. Why would evolution preserve post-reproductive women? The answer was not symbolic. Grandmothers worked, they foraged, they carried, they kept children alive. They feed weaned children while mothers nurse younger infants. In populations studied in Tanzania and elsewhere, children with living grandmothers had measurably better survival rates than those without. A grandmother is not a bonus. She is infrastructure. Menopause may have evolved because grandchildren could be. a better genetic investment, than another child of her own. The ancient human family was not a mother and child. It was a web. A mother who trusted the group enough to let go. A group wired to respond. Grandmothers who stayed useful for decades after their own reproduction ended. Fathers who, in many hunter-gatherer bands, carried infants significantly more than male great apes ever do. Siblings who learned caregiving young and practiced it daily. And inside all of this, a baby, too helpless to survive a single day alone, somehow still alive. That baby grew up in a web of attention it could not name. It learned to speak inside that web. It learned to trust, to share, to read a room. It became the kind of animal that builds fires and sits around them together. The kind that passes an infant across the circle without being asked. The kind that is still here. You are descended from babies who were too fragile to live alone. They survived because someone who was not their mother picked them up and held on. The fire is still burning. The hands are still there. They have always been there.